Hello, and welcome to today's webinar on the standard form of agreement between owner and the owner's representative, brought to you by AIA Contract Documents. This presentation is protected by U.S. and international copyright laws. Reproduction, distribution, display, and use of this presentation without written permission of the speaker is prohibited. The statements expressed by speakers, panelists, and other participants reflect their own views and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of ACD Operations, the American Institute of Architects, or of AIA Components, or those of their respective officers, directors, members, employees, or other organizations, groups, or individuals associated with them. Questions related to specific products and services may be addressed at the conclusion of this presentation. Our presenters today are Peter Comitel, Manager and Counsel from AIA Contract Documents, as well as Elisa Snyder, Manager and Counsel at AIA Contract Documents. We have a small disclaimer before we get started. This presentation and accompanying materials have been provided for general AIA contract document information purposes only. The information is not provided as legal advice. The information provided cannot be used for mediation, arbitration, or litigation purposes. Transmission or receipt of this information does not create an attorney-client relationship. No one should act upon this information without seeking appropriate legal counsel on the particular facts and circumstances at issue. With that, I will turn it over to our speakers.
Thank you, Nadia. Elisa and I wanted to begin by thanking everyone for joining us to talk about an exciting new contract. In this program, we will be discussing a new agreement offered by AIA Contract Documents. That is the C104 2024, the standard form of agreement between owner and owner's representative. Elisa was instrumental in drafting this document, so you will be hearing this information straight from the source, so to speak. With that, I'd like to give you a brief roadmap of what we will cover today. First, we'll be talking about the AIA Contract Documents program generally, at which point we will then turn to the purpose of the C104, why people would want to use the C104, and with our remaining time, while we won't be diving into specific language, Elisa will provide some summary highlights about key provisions that you may find in the C104. The Contract Documents program has a long-standing history. The program has been publishing standard form documents since 1888. That's 136 years of quality content. The AIA Contract Documents program has since grown to encompass nearly 100 agreements and form documents. The purpose of the program is to create a standardized set of legal forms that make these transactions more predictable. Beyond their widespread use, AIA Contract Documents are an industry leader because they incorporate over a century of case law and legal precedent. With each revision, the design, construction, and legal professions evaluate potential new language and adapt it to match industry best practices. Our documents are drafted to represent each party's interest equally, and much of the contract language is focusing on allocating risk to the party best able to manage and control that risk. We are always seeking to improve our offerings during the drafting process. This process begins with collecting and analyzing input from a wide variety of sources. The process is an iterative one, consisting of drafting, reviewing, and revising, all leading to that final version that will be approved by the Contract Documents Committee. And we rely on a variety of sources to write, revise, and update these documents. The heavy lift of writing and revising the documents is done by our volunteer committee of members with assistance from AIA Contract Documents staff, such as Elisa, myself, and our coworkers. We call this committee the Documents Committee. It is a diverse group of volunteers who work across the U.S. and who represent owners, architects, contractors, insurance professionals, and outside legal counsel. The Documents Committee volunteers serve for a cycle of 10 years, which happens to coincide with the 10-year cycle in which we revise our document offerings. As broadly diverse as the committee is, there's always a need for more knowledge and more feedback from industry stakeholders, whether that's AIA groups, ABA construction forum division members, liaisons, and subject matter experts. Each participant plays a vital role in the development of our documents. We perform market research early in the process to validate any issues and topics that are important to the industry. This helps our committee prioritize resources in the areas where change is needed to reflect industry shifts or provide guidance on new initiatives. With this in mind, Elisa, could you tell us a little more about the industry feedback we received when drafting the owner's representative documents?
Yeah, you bet. So when we looked at industry feedback for the C104, really there's a few key things that we looked at. The first would be the role of the owner's representative's relationship with contractors, architects, suppliers. The second would be the various levels of authority that the owner's representatives typically see in their contractual relationships with the owner. So, for example, an owner's representative may have full authority where they can act on behalf of the owner on any activity throughout the duration of the project, or there may be limited authority, such as the owner's representative may be acting underneath certain monetary thresholds, meaning they can only make decisions that will impact the project in a certain within a certain dollar value, or they may be restricted from acting on behalf of the owner for certain critical aspects of the project. So they may not be able to approve change orders or approve changes to the design phase submissions. Other things that we looked at for the owner's respective scope of services is that we asked really whether there were any primary stages in the project where the owner's representative services were more heavily utilized, or really where their services were generally provided, whether their services were provided throughout the entire project. Other things that we looked at were common compensation methods. We also looked at issues that arise on projects between owners and owners' representatives. And then finally, we really sought feedback on key insights and tips to ensure successful relationships between owners and owners' representatives.
You know, we always strive to include stakeholders in the industry that will actually be using our documents. Did you have any personal experience with owners' representatives that you drew from when drafting the agreement?
I do. So my experience with owners' representatives really comes from the contractor's side. As a contractor, it was really important that we could rely on owners' representatives to efficiently communicate. Good communication between the owner, owner's representative, and contractor really always helped us do our work more efficiently. But then also, it helps the owner make decisions quickly and really help the owner navigate through potential project challenges. Good communication was something that always strengthened the relationship between those that were working on the project. But I mean, the opposite was also true. Poor communication and disorganization really often caused delays on the project, either where the owner was trying to make decisions and were delayed in making those decisions, or that even the decisions were made, but the communication of those decisions were not very timely. Any one of those instances could create problems on the project.
Yeah, you know, that's always been my experience as well. With that said, could you talk a little bit about what drove the creation of the C104?
Sure. So, really, the C104 is intended to be used by owners seeking professional assistance on a variety of different projects with various scopes, project delivery methods, and really, this agreement can adjust to small or large scale services.
So with that in mind, who do we foresee using this agreement?
This agreement is really meant to be used by an owner who wants to engage an owner's representative under this agreement for a variety of different reasons. Some of those reasons might include that you may have an owner that doesn't have the internal bandwidth to take on a project like this and oversee that in-house. You might also have an owner that does not have the knowledge or experience to feel confident in overseeing the project that they want to build. So in this case, if the owner's representative could provide the owner the knowledge that it needs to make informed decisions, then the owner could not only run that, help, I guess, produce that project and run that project, but also navigate potential challenges effectively and efficiently.
So this is a brand new document from us for 2024. Is it structured similar to our other offerings?
It is. So while the document is a new offering by the AIA Contract Documents program, the C104 2024 is really structured in the same predictable fashion that's expected by our users. So as you can see on the table of articles on this slide, you see that the document's going to start out with initial information. It's going to move into the owner's representative's responsibilities, its basic services. Then you'll have supplemental and additional services. You'll have the owner's responsibilities. And as we move through to the document end, you'll see special terms and conditions and the scope of this agreement. The other interesting thing to note is that the owner's representative's basic services really include activities that are applicable to all phases of the project, but then we also have an area where specific activities that are tied directly to each project phase are included. So here you're going to see project initiation phase, design and procurement phase, construction phase, and the project completion phase.
So what services can owners expect from owners' representatives, in these various specific phases that you've laid out?
Sure. So some of the provisions that are applicable to all phases of the construction will include consulting with the owner during all phases of the project, ensuring timely communication, securing approvals, entitlements, easements, and monitoring the progress of each one of those applications. You're also going to see the owner's representative assisting the owner in the role of soliciting, selecting, retaining owners, consultants, and contractors for the project, and then also helping them prepare and execute the contracts for those. Other examples that you're going to see for services that are applicable to all phases is going to be the budget and schedule. So here you're going to see that the owner's representative is going to help the owner in developing and monitoring the owner's budget and schedule. You're also going to see that the owner's representative is going to attend design, construction, and other meetings related to the project. Meetings should also, I should probably note that meetings in this agreement, there's no limit to the owner's representative's virtual meeting attendance. The parties may negotiate, however, the number of in-person design, construction, and other meetings related to the project, and they would include that in the cost of their owner's representative basic services. The next thing that you see here is that the owner's representative will also prepare project status reports. The project status reports will include information such as a project summary. In this project summary, you're going to see key items that are included for the owner's decisions and approvals. Then you're going to see updates to the owner's schedule, including observed deviations from the schedule that may impact the milestones, substantial completion, or final completion dates. You'll also see that the owner's representatives' project status reports will include updates to the owner's budget. So this budget update will include updates related to actual and anticipated costs that are reported by each one of the owner's consultants and contractors. You're going to see, to the extent that there's any sustainable objectives, the report will include any updates related to it. And then you're also going to see proposed and approved design and construction changes, including any additional services or change orders that are taking place on the project. And then finally, you're going to see actual and potential claims that are included in that project status report. The owner's representative is also going to be in charge of maintaining the project file. So in this case, the project file would be the project documents containing change orders, contract documents, construction change directives, any other modifications, approved design documents, RFIs, correspondence, and really any other information that the parties would like to include as a project file document.
Great. So now that we've discussed, services that are going to be required of the owner's rep throughout the life cycle of the project, could you talk a little bit more about services that are tied directly to specific phases of the project?
Yeah. So the first project phase that is mentioned in the agreement is the project initiation phase. Here's where we're going to talk about the owner's program or initial information. And I think it's helpful as a reminder to say that the owner's program includes a description of the owner's purpose and goals for a project. And this really provides a clear focus for the mutual understanding of the parties that will provide work or services on a project. And then when we're talking about initial information includes things such as the project's physical characteristics, owner's budget, intended procurement or delivery methods, schedule, any sustainable objectives, any other consultants or contractors that are retained by the owner or the owner's representative. So in this case, if the owner doesn't have program requirements or doesn't have an owner's program complete, or the initial information needs to be completed, the owner's representative would help the owner with the necessary steps to develop the owner's program requirements or complete initial information. and really just help the owner obtain any other information that is going to be furnished by them to their consultants and contractors. The second phase that we're going to see here is the design and procurement phase services, and that includes staying informed about the progress of the design services, consulting with the owner and architect in soliciting and reviewing proposed contractors for the project, and assisting the owner in selecting contractors for the project. It's also good to note here that to the extent that the owner's representatives reviews design submissions, their review is really for the limited purpose of checking the design conformance with the owner's program and schedule requirements, and not for the purposes of discovering any errors, omissions, or inconsistencies in the architect's submissions. However, the owner's representative does have an obligation to promptly report to the owner and architect any one of those errors, inconsistencies, or omissions that they discover or that's made known to them. The third project specific phase that we get into is the construction phase services, and these include staying informed about the progress of the work throughout the construction phase and assisting the owner in reviewing and processing certificates of payment. Now, as it relates to certificates of payment, what the owner's representative will really be involved with here is reviewing the data substantiating the contractor's right to payment that they include in the applications. So, for example, the owner's representative may be reviewing copies of requisitions, releases of waivers of liens from subcontractors or suppliers, and really to the extent that they discover any discrepancies or concerns during their review of these certificates for payment, they would inform the architect and owner of what they've found. The fourth project phase that you're going to see is the project completion phase services, and that includes attending the architect's substantial completion and final completion inspections, coordinating delivery of all warranties, guarantees, and project closeout items to the owner, performing final analysis of project costs compared to the owner's project budget, and then to the extent that it's requested, the owner's representative would meet with the owner and architect to review facility operations and performance. I think it's also worth noting here that when it comes to attending inspections, the intent here is that the owner's representative will be generally familiar with the progress of the completed portions of the work, and this would even include reviewing the contractor's list of work to be completed or corrected. The owner's representative's attendance at any inspection really is not for the purpose of evaluating the conformance of the work with the contract requirements, but really here, again, just like during the design phase services, the owner's representative needs to report any kind of defects or deficiencies observed in the work, both to the architect and the owner, to the extent that they find them.
Yeah, that's great, Elisa. It sounds like our users will be getting valuable services throughout the entire project using that document. I mean, how valuable. I wanted to go back to one thing you touched on briefly. You mentioned supplemental and additional services. Could you explain what that means and what services may be considered supplemental versus additional services in the agreement?
Sure. So I think it's helpful as a reminder to say that supplemental services are those services that the parties contemplate performing before the contract is executed. So the supplemental services included in this agreement include some of the most common services that an owner's representative might perform in addition to their basic services. So as you look on the slide here, you'll see things like capital campaign support. You may see existing facilities analysis. You might see cost estimating being performed by an owner's representative. Other things that might be included are early procurement of materials and equipment. But really there is another fill point section so that if there's something else that we have not provided as a supplemental service, the owner and the owner's representative can negotiate what those supplemental services might be. Then, as it relates to additional services, these are the services that might occur during the performance of the project after the contract is executed. So here, for example, you're going to see things like services necessitated by a material change in the project. You may have an issue where the owner or the owner's consultants and contractors fail to perform, or they're delayed in their performance that's impacting the owner's representative services and what was contemplated as the basis of their compensation. You may also have an extensive amount of claims that's going to require the owner's representative services at a more frequent or more common basis than what they anticipated. You may also see that there may be a need for preparing for an attendance at a public presentation, a meeting, a hearing, or even a dispute resolution proceeding or legal proceeding. I should also note that if there's additional services related to preparation for or attendance at any one of the dispute resolution proceedings or legal proceedings, it's not necessarily going to be an additional service if the owner's representative is a party to it.
So it sounds like the owner's representative has a high level of involvement in the project. What authority do they have to make decisions on behalf of the owner?
That's a good question. So it's worth noting in this agreement that the owner's representative does not have full authority on the project. So the limitations to the owner's representative's authority on this agreement are going to be things like approving the owner's written program or the architect's design phase submissions. The owner's representative is not going to be able to enter into, modify, terminate, or amend contracts or any other legal binding agreements. You're going to see that the owner's representative doesn't have the authority to authorize change orders or construction change directives, reject, suspend, stop the work, adjust or settle insured losses, settle claims, waive rights, and really anything else that the parties want to negotiate as a limitation to the owner's representative's authority in this agreement. The C104 places limitations on the owner's representative's authority to act. And I think it's important to note that that our AIA contract documents do publish many standard form agreements where the owner identifies the owner's representative with full authority to act on behalf of the owner in relation to the project. Because of the limitations that are set forth in the C104 related to the owner's representative's authority to act on behalf of the owner, users should really consult with an attorney before designating the C104 owner's representative agreement as the owner's representative in any other standard form agreement that we publish.
I'd like to talk a little more about a point you just touched on. Could you expand on the differences between the owner's representative under the new C104 and the owner's representative that our users might find under our other agreements?
Sure. So I think here it's probably better explained by an example. If you look at the diagram on the left, you're going to see a conventional contract structure. Here's where the owner hires the architect and a contractor to perform the services or work on a project. In most cases, the name of the owner in a contract is the business entity. Then you have the contract, which includes a fill point for the parties to name an individual who works within the company that will have the authority to make decisions for that company. Then you have the same thing happening in the contract for the contractor and the architect. So then you see on the right, you have the same conventional contract structure, only the owner's entity has now retained a third-party representative to perform the services that we've discussed during this webinar. So it's helpful to note that since this is a standard form agreement, the list of limitations that are on the owner's representative that we reviewed in the previous slide may be amended based on the parties' negotiated relationship. So, for example, the parties may wish to remove the standard form limitations or allow the owner's representative to act on behalf of the owner subject to monetary thresholds. Really, considerations for the owner's representative's authority should be discussed prior to executing the C104 agreement.
Yeah, that's great. And I think it's a critical distinction too. So we've talked a lot about the owner's representative's responsibilities, and I think some on the call will be wondering, what kind of responsibilities can an owner expect to fulfill as part of the C104?
Great question. So what you'll see is in this agreement, the owner's responsibilities are going to include providing information and providing updated information to the owner's representative regarding the project. They're going to need to collaborate with the owner's representative to establish and periodically update the project budget. They're going to also be responsible to retain all the consultants and contractors necessary to carry out the services or work on the project. Here you'll see that the owner provides copies of executed agreements to the owner's representatives so that it can perform its various oversight functions. And also the owner's representative or the owner will provide access to the project.
That's great. You know, I might be biased, but I think this new agreement is great and is going to provide a lot of value to people. I only wish I had it when I was in private practice, you know. It seems flexible enough to work on a variety of different projects, regardless of their scope or project delivery method, not to mention the fact it can adjust to smaller, large-scale services. One thing I think people might still be curious about is the actual payment under the C104. Could you talk a little bit about the compensation between the owner and the owner's rep structured in this agreement?
Sure. So, since this agreement is meant to be flexible, the manner in which the owner will pay the owner's representative is also meant to be flexible. So, in this, you're going to see in Article 9, you're going to see basic or the basis for compensation for the basic services. This can be a stipulated sum, it can be hourly or monthly billing rates, or some other method. You're also going to see a section for where the parties can negotiate compensation for supplemental and additional services. You'll see reimbursable expenses, frequency of payment, including any initial payments or down payments that the parties would like to negotiate.
That's really great, Elisa. Thank you so much. I know we also wanted to thank everyone for taking the time out of their busy schedules to be with us today. You know, I think this document's going to be a really great asset for owners, you know, particularly those who are maybe not familiar with the construction process or those who simply can't devote the necessary time or attention to an ongoing project. I mean, I'm sure we all know how that feels.
Yeah, I mean, when I reflect on the work that took place to draft and finalize this new owner's representative agreement, there were really a couple key things that guided us. One, we found that the role of the owner's representative on a project can really take so many different forms. We also found that the industry kind of struggled to find a way to contract for the wide variety of services that owners or representatives could provide. So, our primary focus and goal was to provide an agreement that could be used for a variety of different circumstances and projects, while also providing a contract that embodies the best practices of the industry. So, I really hope that the users of this new representative agreement document will find that we delivered on that goal.
Thank you so much, Elisa and Peter, for that insightful presentation. If you're looking for information on our selection of webinars, please visit our Learn page. To contact us about our documents or our online service, please utilize the contact information shared with you on your screen. Thank you so much for attending our webinar today, and thank you to our speakers, Elisa and Peter. Have a wonderful day, everyone.